Namaskar and welcome back to Aviation Avi, go where you feel the most alive. In today's video, Shantanu and me and Vesha bring to you part 2A of the video on wildlife hazard management at an airport. In the first part, we understood why are airports at all concerned about wildlife? How do airports manage wildlife at their airport? How do they assess the risk and identify mitigation measures against wildlife hazards? And in this video today, we'll be talking about the potentials of wildlife strike. What is the impact of wildlife strikes and why are certain species more hazardous to aircraft operations than the others? We'll also look at some active and passive methods of bird hazard control. Further, in part 2B of this video, we'll be going through the wildlife strike reporting and record keeping and the ICAO bird strike information system. So, if you visit these videos one by one in sequence, you will have an overall idea of how airports manage wildlife hazards in the environment and within the airport. So without any delay, let's get started with the part 2A of the video on wildlife hazard management. So with this image, we will try to understand the impact of a bird strike. Bird strike into an aircraft engine can cause a total damage to the aircraft engine and can result in loss of control of the aircraft, potentially leading to an accident or an incident. Further, it can cause structural damage to the aircraft. There can be blood stains on the dome or different parts of the aircraft where there has occurred a bird strike. The birds can also cause damage to the windscreen of the aircraft. Further, the famous case where bird ingestion into the aircraft engine led to the loss of control of the aircraft when the pilot, Captain Sully, decided to land the aircraft on the Hudson River. So these pictures clearly depict how critical bird strikes can be on the safe operation of aircraft. So with this video, you can understand that it is not only important for the airport operator to maintain safe environment within the airport, but also around the airport to maintain safe aircraft operations in critical phases of flight, particularly takeoff and landing. So as we saw in the previous slides, the amount of damage a bird can cause when it hits the aircraft can be significant and potentially catastrophic, leading to an accident. The impact can cause engine failure, windshield damage, airframe damage, navigation system damage, which particularly means there can be damage to the navigation antennas and disrupt critical phases of flight. Further, they can involve safety risks because when an aircraft ingests a bird into, let's say, the engine, it can cause a total loss of control, potentially leading to crashes and posing significant risk to the passenger and crew safety. So this is the potential impact of bird strike. The estimated annual cost of bird strikes to the global aviation industry is around $1.2 billion. A single bird strike can cost anywhere from $5,000 to $500,000 or more, depending on the extent of damage. Some of the notable examples of bird strikes include the US Airways Flight 1549, which we discussed in the previous slide, which led to the aircraft ditching into the Hudson River. Further is the Ethiopian Airlines Flight 604 in the year 1988, where a bird strike caused an engine failure leading to the crash and killed 35 people on board. The Southwest Airlines Flight 2294, where a bird strike caused significant damage to the aircraft nose and the windshield. So you can understand that bird strike can have catastrophic impact on the safe operations of aircraft. Now let us understand why are birds more dangerous as compared to other wildlife creatures. Number one reason is abundance. Birds are ubiquitous, that means they are present everywhere and they are in abundant numbers near the airport, making encounters more likely with the aircraft. Size and weight. Large birds like geese, vultures and eagles can cause significant damage to aircraft like you can see in the images here. They have caused structural damages to the aircraft, and here potentially there is an impact on the engine and there may be a case where there is engine failure of this aircraft. The speed and maneuverability of the birds are also one of the reasons why they are more dangerous as compared to other wildlife. Birds can be very fast and make sudden movements, making them difficult to avoid. The altitudes they fly in. Birds can fly in various altitudes, including those that are used by aircraft during phases of flight like takeoff, landing, and climb. The behavior of the birds also make them more dangerous because birds are attracted to the airport due to the sources of food, nesting sites, and migration patterns. That is why it is very important to make the airport most unattractive for wildlife creatures and specifically birds, that they are not attracted towards the airport. Birds are unpredictable. The behavior of birds can be unpredictable, making it challenging for the pilots to anticipate and react to their presence. There is limited visibility for the aircraft crew when it is concerned with bird movements. Birds may not be visible to the pilot, especially during the nighttime or poor weather conditions. Thus, it becomes difficult for the aircraft crew to avoid bird movement. The aircraft design further. The aircraft engines and the windshields are vulnerable to bird strikes and can cause severe damage, like you can see in the images here. While other wildlife creatures like the deers or coyotes can pose significant risk to aircraft operations, birds are most significant threat because of their abundance, size, and behavior near the airports. Now that we have understood the impact of wildlife strikes or bird strikes particularly, let us understand where they are exactly reported so that we can target the hazard mitigation accordingly. The analysis of data of wildlife or bird or animal strike indicates that maximum number of strikes to aeroplane occurs during the landing and takeoff phases. DGCA has issued regulations and guidelines for management of potential wildlife hazards at licensed airports. DGCA is the civil aviation regulator in India. So likewise, the civil aviation regulators of different countries can issue various guidelines, particularly for mitigating wildlife hazards at the airports in the country. Rule 91 of the Aircraft Rule 1937 in India prohibits dumping of garbage and slaughter of animals that can attract wildlife within 10 km of the aerodrome reference point. So, the airport operator has a team that carries out surveillance around the airport within the 10 km radius, spreading awareness on the impact of dumping of garbage and slaughtering of animals within the 10 km radius, because it becomes a major factor for attracting wildlife towards the airport. There are certain birds which are high risk to aircraft operations because of their size, abundance, and behavior. Let us look at some of the examples. The Canada geese, which is large, aggressive, and is common near the airports. The turkey vultures, which are large, soaring birds with a wingspan of 6 feet. So you can imagine how big these birds are. The American white pelicans, which are large birds with a wingspan of about 7 feet. Now that we have understood the impact of wildlife hazards, let us look at some active measures or active methods that airport operators can implement to control birds coming towards an airport. Before considering the use of an active method to disperse or deter wildlife on an aerodrome, consideration should be given to the fact that doing nothing may in some cases be better than chasing away the birds from the existing location. To understand this, you can consider the example that there are nesting birds near the approach path of an airport. So in case you decide to deter these birds, there may be a case when this flock of birds move towards the approach path of the aircraft, and it can lead to a catastrophic incident. You may not consider chasing away the birds as the most appropriate mitigation measure for bird control. So in certain cases, it is acceptable to tolerate the presence of birds on certain parts of the aerodrome. There are various methods of dispersal or deterring methods which vary in level of success. Firstly, the presence of humans is the most simple measure to deter wildlife. The use of distress call is an effective way for certain kind of birds as long as these birds are correctly identified and right distress call are used for them. Certain species are more susceptible to certain sound. So it is important to identify the birds we are targeting this distress call to. Cannons and other noisemakers remain effective methods, but variation is needed to avoid habituation, because wildlife species can get habituated to these noises, and one day you can find a bird resting on top of these devices. So it is important that these noises differ in their timing and their sounds, so that the animals nearby are not habituated to the sound. Kites, balloons, flags, scarecrows, reflective objects, rotating spinners are cheap visual deterrents, but they show very rapid habituation. Pyrotechnics carrying cartridges, flare guns are within the limits imposed by its range, more rapidly mobile than birds. It enables to control the direction of movement of targeted flocks. By positioning themselves and aiming the pistol appropriately, it is possible to keep the flock of birds on track when we are trying to deter these birds. Repellents are substances that animals can find unpleasant to their taste, smell, or touch. For example, green laser beams guns seem to be effective to chase water birds away from water surfaces at the airport. Active measures, there can be some passive methods that are used to deter birds. To mitigate the risk of strikes beyond the airport vicinity, the general public and the aviation community must first widen its view of wildlife management to consider habitats and land uses within 10 km approximately of airports. This can be regulated as to how far from the airport is wildlife mitigation to be implemented. Wetlands, contaminated areas, municipal solid waste lands, and wildlife refuges can attract hazardous wildlife. The land use and the habitat management on areas near the airport are also an important consideration. Although an airport operator may have limited ability to control off-site land use and will need to work in partnership with the local landlords and stakeholders, so there can be in order to coordinate with the municipal authorities or the local authorities, the aerodrome operator can consider carrying out some meetings where they discuss such issues like the use of land in the nearby area to the airport, and spread awareness regarding areas must be taken care of by collaborative efforts from the landlords, local authorities, and stakeholders, like the nature conservation and recreational activities, local agricultural practices, because there are certain agricultural produces which attract wildlife and certain which do not. So it must be taken care that only unattractive agricultural practices are carried out near the airport environs. The landfill and solid waste management, stormwater and wastewater treatment plants, water bodies including reservoirs, lakes, rivers, and the sea are a great attractant for wildlife towards the airport. Wetlands including marshes, gravel pits, and quarries. It is important that these resources are managed tactfully in order to ensure that wildlife is not attracted towards the airport. I hope with this video we could understand some of the active and passive controls of wildlife mitigation that an airport operator can implement. We also went through how wildlife activity can impact the safe operations of aircraft to and from an airport. We also understood some critical phases of flight and where bird strikes occur. To stay tuned for part 2B of this video, where we'll discuss the wildlife reporting format. If you like our work, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe, because your support is our greatest motivation. Let us know in the comment section below what more videos you'd like to watch on Aviation Avi. You'll find the link to our LinkedIn profiles on the description. You can follow us over there. And this is Anvisha Pal signing off.